So before we get into the changes that I would make to the crafting rules, I want to make sure we're all on the same page in what the crafting rules are. Let me adjust my thing here. Okay. A character who has the time, the money, and the needed tools can use downtime to craft armor, weapons, clothing, or other kinds of non-magical gear. In addition to the appropriate tools for the item, a character needs raw materials worth half of the item's selling cost. So when you craft something, you're effectively just paying half price for it. Half price plus time. To determine how many work weeks it takes to create an item, divide its gold piece cost by 50. A character can complete multiple items in a work week if the item's combined cost is 50 or lower. So what that is saying is that in one work week, you can accomplish 50 gold pieces worth of work. So if you have an item, let me find one here in the player's handbook. If you have an item that costs exactly 50 gold pieces, like a chain shirt, you can craft a chain shirt in one work week for half the gold cost. So you would pay 25 gold and you would work for one work week and you would craft the chain shirt. So that's how it works. Or scale mail. Scale mail is also 50 gold. So that's how that works. And in case you're wondering, a work week, I have that pulled up here. Downtime activities or tasks that usually take a work week, 5 days or longer to perform. So a work week is 5 days in D&D, which means, do a little math here. If one work week, if 5 days equals 50 gold, how much gold is 1 day? Came here to watch videos, not do math facts. So you can accomplish, 10 gold pieces worth of work per day. And it takes 5 days. So 5 days is a work week. In Faerun, a 10 day is 10 days. So 2 work weeks. I guess you could do that if you work every day. Just to keep the math simple, a 10 day is 2 work weeks. So that's it. From there, as a DM, you have to determine what proficiencies they need in order to craft an item. Multiple characters can combine their efforts. A character needs to be proficient with the tools needed to craft an item and have access to the appropriate equipment. Everyone who collabs needs to have appropriate tool proficiencies, etc. Herbalist kit can make a potion of healing. This has always bothered me. The alchemy tools cannot make a potion of healing, but the herbalist can. Leatherworkers, leather armor and boots. Smith tools gets armor and weapons. Weavers gets cloaks and robes. So those are the crafting rules. That's it. You take the gold value of a mundane object. Magical items are a little different, and that is for a different time. We'll talk about that later. If I find a vein of armor and I'm proficient in smithing, I have to pay to make a weapon or piece of armor. By the rules, yes. By the core rules, there's no crafting or there's no gathering in the core rules. The DM just has to come up with how much iron you find. We're going to go over that in a moment. We're going to go over like homebrew. We're going to go over some homebrew crafting. So that's it. That's really all we have. Now, I want to have a look real quick at the tool proficiencies. So these are your tools. These would be what you use. Actually, I'm going to pull it up in the player's handbook. So these are your tools. These would be what you craft with in D&D. I strongly recommend that DMs come up with their own list. Do not use this list. This list is terrible. The very first thing, if you change anything, if you take anything away from this, please change the tools. Just use a different set of tools. I'm going to tell you what I use, but please, if you don't like what I use, change it, but please don't use this. We've got painter's supplies, glass blowers tools, cobblers, like this, some of these are just absolutely useless. Don't even bother. Alchemy is useful. Calligraphy supplies. I mean, some of these are just bad. All right. The flavor is nice. but they're just useless, like mechanically useless. And Xanathar's tried to fix it, and they didn't. So please, please, please change the tool proficiency. Change the tools that are available. Just change it. I'll go over a couple of the tools. Alchemy supplies is nice, although you can't make healing potions with it. I would strongly recommend you homebrew that too. Brewers, calligraphers, carpenter, wood carvers is pretty good. Where's wood carvers? So cartography is pretty good. Cartography is pretty good because you can draw a map while you travel. This pretty much means you can't get lost. If you're proficient in cartographer tools and you have these tools, you can't get lost. It's pretty cool. I'd still recommend getting rid of them, but it's still cool. Cobblers, 8 hours of work. You can add a hidden compartment to a pair of shoes. It can hold an object 3 inches long, 1 inch wide. Wow. A proficiency for that. Cook's utensils I really like, but I don't have any rules expanded on the cook's utensils. I would love for there to be food buffs in D&D, but I haven't found anything at the DM's Guild for this. I would really like to have that. Disguise kit, get out of here. Forgery kit, get out of here. Gaming set. Glass blowers tools is the absolute worst. I think the glass blowers tools may be the worst. The worst proficiency to have. You can study the weak point in glass. Any damage done to the glass is doubled. Wow. Wow, you do double damage to glass. Oh, you can identify, or you can determine what a glass object once held. DC 20. Identify the source of glass. Wow, sand. We did it. I'm joking, but I think this is the worst. Jewelers. I'm not really sure what this does. Identify gems, I guess. Yay. Land and water vehicles. Sure. Leatherworkers. The best one. I think the best tools. Besides, smith tools, poisoner's kits. Thieves tools is the best. Wood carvers is really good. You can craft arrows. Where is it? As part of a short rest, you can craft 5 arrows. Long rest, you can craft 20. Absolutely, that's great. You always have arrows with this. Obviously, this is for people that keep track of arrows, but this is a great one. So I recommend completely changing this. So these are the rules. So you have the rules for crafting. Now I'm gonna recommend some DM's Guild homebrew. So the first one that I recommend is Hammond's Harvesting Handbook. I think this is $10 on the DM's Guild, worth every penny. This book adds appraising, harvesting, and crafting. So whenever you kill a monster, you make a check, DC 8 plus the CR of the monster you killed. These are the different skill checks. Whenever you kill a monster, you make a check. If you succeed, you identify the parts that a monster has. And there's a whole chart. I'll go over that in a second, what parts you can get. But there's a whole chart of things that you can pull from monsters. So once you've appraised a monster, you use your harvesting tools to gather the pieces. So for example, the bullet, which is a CR5. That means that to identify the useful parts of a bullet, you need an 8 plus 5, so a 13, to determine this stuff. Once you've identified the useful parts, you roll to harvest. If you get a 10, you get bullet teeth, a small pouch of bullet teeth. You get a 15, you get their claws, you get 4 claws, and if you get a 20, you get a hide. And if you get a 20, you get everything below. So whatever you roll, you get everything below it. And you can use these materials to craft stuff. So for example, the teeth, you can make a dagger or a spear. The claws, you can make a stone cleaver weapon. Or stone swim armor out of their hide. So every monster in the monster manual is listed here. So at the very end, it talks about crafting. We've got the rules for crafting. You have to have the craftable item, materials time. The base component is the item that you harvest from the monster itself. And then you have these crafting, the crafter skills. Now this book does have a limit on your proficiency skill versus what you can craft. But the main thing that I want to go over is what this book changes what tool proficiencies it changes, or rather what tool proficiencies it uses to craft. It's got the alchemist, it's got the artificer, which at the time when this person made it, the artificer wasn't a class. I recommend changing that to enchanter, which is what I did for my games. I named this artificer's tools enchanter's tools. Blacksmith, we've got leatherworker, tinkerer, and then thaumaturge. So this is it. That's all they have. Alchemist, enchanter, blacksmith, leatherworker, tinkerer, and thaumaturge. And again, this book came out before the artificer was released. So the author called this the artificer. I recommend changing the name so it's not confusing. I changed it to enchanter. It's basically the same thing. Anyone who works primarily in molding, transfiguration, enchanting, manufacturing magical items, enchanting works just as well. And then there you go. These are your tools. So I would recommend making these your tools. These are the tools that I use. I'm actually going to go ahead and pull up my character creation rules. So I modified my character creation rules. Boom. So you got thieves tools, the usual for picking locks. Harvester's kit. That's what you use to pull parts from monsters. And then you have all the tools that I just listed. That's for crafting. I want to add chef's utensils here. Utensils spelling. But I need to find a good set of rules for cooking and food buffs for that. And this book lists everything that you can get. So here's all the items that are in the monster or the here's all the items that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can make anti-venom. If you're an alchemist, you can make anti-venom. If you're a leather worker, you can make these cloaks. If you're an artificer, you can make an elemental gem, etc. Figurine of wondrous power, artificer. And it just goes through every single item and tells you which of the crafters can make it. I love this. I highly recommend this. And it also adds a glossary of new magic items that can be crafted from those monsters. So for example, here's a chimera kite. Requires 2 chimera dragon wings. A leather worker can make this. And then it details what this thing can do. Chain of entanglement requires a living chain. Not sure what has that, but you can like search it. So yeah, highly recommend this. And then the other book I would recommend is Geshe's Guide to Making Things. Now I haven't looked through all of this just yet, but from what I saw, I like. So this adds materials to weapons and armor. Notice that most of that what we talked about in that other book didn't have weapons and armor. So this adds materials for weapons and armor and how to make it. They complement each other pretty well. This also adds the rules for bombs. Let me find. Now I'm not sure if I want to wrap this in to alchemy or not. So my list this is my list. Notice that I didn't put bomb maker's tools. I'm still on the fence of whether or not I want to make bomb maker's tools unique or rather just wrap these bombs into alchemist. I haven't decided whether I want to do that or not. But I might separate it. Alchemy has plenty. I think alchemy has plenty on its own. I just want to make sure every tool is worth taking. That's the main thing that I want. Is that I want every tool to be useful in its own way, unlike the core rules, unlike rules as written. So harvester kit, you can harvest supplies. Alchemy, you can make potions and poison. I did wrap poison into alchemy, so I guess alchemy is good on its own. Blacksmith, weapons and armor. Leather worker, leather armor. Question, why does everything have to be useful in a gameplay sense? Why can't some things be flavor or for story? Because flavor is free. Flavor is free. If you have something flavor that you want, that should be free. You shouldn't have to spend. I strongly feel that everything flavor and everything mechanical should be completely separated. Like a strong division should be placed between flavor and mechanics.